My name is Pauline and I've created this podcast, Speak Up, to help remove the stigma of mental health and to get young people speaking about mental health.
Please be advised, this podcast contains potentially upsetting discussions about mental health and suicide. If you're a young person seeking mental health support, please see our end of episode guidance, contact your GP for support, or call the Papyrus helpline for immediate help on 0800 068 4141. Thanks.
The reason I want to do this podcast is because I want to investigate mental health and young people and why no one is doing anything about it, why our services cut short, and what are ways that young people can cope today. I will start this podcast, first of all, investigating my own personal life and how mental health has affected not only myself, but the people around me, most notably my friends. And this has been one of the reasons why I started this podcast, is because two of my friends, when I was 15, committed suicide. And this was a massive shock, not just to me, but to all the people around me, my school friends, my family, their family, everyone. So this first episode will be trying to go back and investigating who the people were at that time and how they're coping now and why suicide is so common.
Suicide is the leading cause of death among young people aged 5 to 24 in the UK. The rate of youth suicide has risen by 67% in England and Wales since 2010, and the rate amongst 10 to 19-year-olds has doubled in London over the past 3 years.
A lot of people were using Tumblr to group together and talk about their mental health issues, but it turned out to be something much darker than it was meant to. There started to become pro-anorexia groups, pro-suicide groups. You just had to type in self-harm to see pictures of young girls having cut themselves, young boys as well. It really was something which was a very scary place. So any young person could go on there, no age restriction, and could look up all these things. There was pro-dieting groups, which made you eat 5, 10 calories a day. And this was something which I wasn't personally involved in, but I knew a lot of my friends were. I was really fortunate to have Mim Fothergill share her story with me about her experience was with it and how she's recovered from it. So, nice to have you.
Nice to be here.
Good. I guess what we're going to start by doing is just telling me a bit about you and just introduce yourself.
Okay, well, my name's Mim.
Yep.
I am 20 now, turning 21 in a few months. I'm doing an access course at the moment to hopefully go on to university in September, which is quite a big change in my life because that was something I never ever thought I was going to do and follow that path. So I think that's kind of what I'm doing now, is just like focusing on education and getting myself better.
Cool.
From the years.
Yeah. So what I guess tell us a bit about your history with mental health and also like growing up in Brent and what's been the two together and
So it starts all when I was about 14. I think obviously my problems probably began a lot younger than that. But it was when I was 14, so I was in year 9. I kind of just turned 14 because I'm born in the summer, so I'm a bit younger, and I developed an eating disorder. I developed anorexia and was diagnosed when I was 14 with anorexia and depression. And it was all like very, very quick for me. It's sort of I've had like complete issues with body and weight and myself and my self-confidence since I can remember, sort of since I became conscious of having my own thoughts and feelings of myself. A lot of bullying, but it wasn't until sort of 14 or sort of like 13, late 13 and 14 when these sort of symptoms actually became more of a problem, like a deeper problem for me. It's all quite a blur because it was such a quick thing to happen. I think a lot of people with eating disorders, their story is a lot more slow. I think they can sort of like have these sort of symptoms of eating disorders, and it can go for a few years without anyone really noticing what happened. But for me, it was more, I came back to school from summer in September when I was 14, and it was all just like too intense for me. I think I was really scared of sort of the bullying continuing, and I needed to do something about my weight. And I sort of turned to the obvious thing for me to do was to stop eating. It became, I started seeing food in a way that it wasn't helping me, and in fact it was like my enemy. It was making me fat, and if I could just stop eating, then I would be thin and my life would be good. So that sort of happened, and around the time of me not really I started to stop eating. It was quite gradual, but like in a short amount of time. And not only did I kind of feel that with myself, I found Tumblr, and I'm not sure if I think my eating disorder would have happened even if I didn't have Tumblr. But what made it so quick for me was just having all this information about eating disorders like online and like free access for me, which was a bit insane thinking about like how like such young, like you can be at any age and just find all of this online. So it was sort of the time, when everyone had blogs and Tumblr.
No, definitely.
And I was kind of reblogging pictures of like young girls, like with like blonde hair, those kind of like LA sort of skateboard girls, like how everyone was. And I think over a period of like a few weeks, I probably started like putting into Tumblr like thin, like sad, depression, self-harm, that sort of thing, and more things came up, and I started reblogging more, and I saw this other side, and I didn't actually know what anorexia was at that point in my life. It was just something I'd kind of overheard as like, you stop eating. And I found a girl who was about the same age as me from Canada, and her blog was called Skinny-Kills. I remember her really clearly because she was the first person I ever spoke to on Tumblr. And I kind of messaged her, and I kind of started asking her questions about like what her like problems are with her like eating disorder, because she was quite vocal on her blog. And it just kind of, it became so natural for me to talk to her, because it was someone I could like confide into that wasn't people around me, because like I wouldn't ever talk to anyone about like my problems of like eating and anything. So I kind of found her, changed my username to skinny-hurts, which was when like my eating disorder blog kind of became a thing, and I was just like addicted to it. I think from the outside world, like my own reality, I was I was not eating, and my family was quite we were quite torn apart because we'd had a lot of cancers and deaths sort of around in the year of 2 years. So it was all like no one was really watching me, and I think that allowed me to really get deep into it very quickly, because I could kind of go days without eating, and my parents wouldn't really notice at first, just because you could throw my lunch away and not have to eat anything at school and kind of get around dinner, and it was all just kind of became this thing. And then I had my online platform where I was just like constantly looking at pictures of like really, really thin anorexic girls, and then I started talking to more people, and then I started getting followers, and it just became this this like insane sort of world where my reality kind of shifted into online. And I had it happened in like a few months after actually my parents found my blog, which is it's funny because it like the blog is so it's something I've actually only really started to speak about in the last few months to people, because my blog was something that nearly killed me but also saved me, because my parents found it and obviously saw that and like this was not right. So sent me to the doctor straight away, and then I got referred to a psychiatrist and then a therapist, and started getting all this help like instantly.
Yeah.
Which is not, I know like that's not everyone's sort of story. I think I was quite lucky in that way. I think having like quite supportive parents, because they like noticed what was going on, like in, you know, I was probably started getting therapy in like 2 months after my eating disorder developed, and was like instantly diagnosed with anorexia. And yeah, it was
amazing.
It's so weird for me to kind of think about this blog and like social media and like the influence it had on my eating disorder, because I don't think what I experienced would have happened so fast, because it was kind of like September I kind of developed my anorexia, like November I was diagnosed, January I took an overdose, like sort of then started kind of becoming on the road to recovery.
Yeah. I guess the stuff about Tumblr is funny. You said about it like nearly killed you, but also like saved you, because I guess with my friend it was the same thing. It was like the same that same community of people on Tumblr.
Yeah, it was. We followed each other, which was quite crazy. And yeah, it's like it's not something people really know about. Like I think a lot of people have heard about the Tumblr community, like with eating disorder, that everyone knows it's really messed up. And there's like many parts of it. It's quite complex actually, the blogs that exist, because there's the whole like pro anorexia where and that's what I found at the beginning, and people were like actually like finding people to starve with, which like I remember like kind of getting into that, and then just kind of being like, no, this is too much for me. And there were these like really crazy diets, like the ABC diet, and I think he had it was like 5 calories a day sort of diet things. I remember like writing in my diary, I've got some old diary entries of like what I need to eat a day, and it's like 5 calories, and this is all found from Tumblr. But I'm a very empathetic, sort of feeling sensitive person. So I think what I used for Tumblr was like just to sort of write about my experience, and that got a lot of attention from young people who were also suffering with anorexia. So there was this like paradox of young people kind of looking up to me, but kind of looking out to me as like a friend who they could and I could exchange experiences with. And that's what I like truly believed like my blog was for, is that no one else understood what I was going through in like my outside world. Only these girls were the only people who understood, and in parts I think it was really good for me, because I could actually talk to people and somehow let out something, because I think with like my family and my therapist and everything, I was like completely silent because I wasn't ready to get better. But with this blog, I was like able to express myself, and that's what we all believed. We like genuinely just believed it was a like a platform that we could just be open and people understood. But actually, it's really complex, because eating disorders are so competitive. If you're seeing other girls like with their own eating disorders, you're going to compare yourself to them. You're going to compare to how ill they are, what they're doing, like their weight. So I think it just became this really like competitive sort of like game where we would just like say we're helping each other, but actually if I was seeing like one of my friends getting like a lot thinner, that would like really like motivate me to just like stop eating. And and I learned a lot. Like I learned about like throwing my food, like throwing up food through that. Like it wasn't something I really thought about doing until I saw it on Tumblr as well. And just like the accessibility of all these images is insane, what you can find.
Where would you be without it? do you think it was something actually that ended up being positive? Like, you obviously done all those negative things, but then it also made you, maybe you didn't speak about it with your friends at the time, so maybe it gave you like a perspective of speaking to people who are going through the same thing.
Yeah, I think honestly I think there's more negatives about it than positives. The more I think back to it, just because anyone with any mental health problem or illness, you shouldn't be. What I don't think you should be like surrounded by these people who are exactly the same. I think with eating disorders as well, I think for a 14-year-old girl to be constantly in contact with other sort of 14 to 18-year-old girls talking about eating disorders, talking about what they've eaten for dinner, like what they've thrown up, like how much they've self-harmed. You know, they got to points where I remember I had a friend from Ireland and she took an overdose and had posted it on the blog, and this was and I ended up having to like call, I maybe had her address or something, I can't remember, but like called the police, like the local police around her area or something, and had to get them to like come to her house, and it's just like, you know, it's like
so young as well.
Yeah, it's like responsibility. I felt so responsible for these people. Like, it wasn't only my problems I had, it was like all these other girls. I had to kind of because I cared so much for them. We all cared so deeply for each other. It was like we all had to
be there for each other.
Yeah, and I just don't think that's a sort of responsibility that anyone should be taking on. And I think like social media allows that to happen too much. I think it allows people to get too involved in other people's lives. Just, you know, like none of us were sane in that sense.
Yeah, no. And do you think there can be any space for like positivity with, like, in terms of social media and mental health? Like, are there good platforms, or do you think that there could be ways of bridging the two in like a positive way?
I think there can be, but I think it's really hard. From my own, like, it might be different for other people, but I get really triggered by following anyone with any sort of mental health like problem on, even if they're like kind of spokesman for mental health, like I get really triggered by it, especially with eating disorders. I tend to just like not look at people online anymore with sort of mental health problems, because I think I compare myself to it too much, and there's also like the aspect that like I'm still dealing with my anorexia every day, and like because there's like this, it's really hard, but because there's this part of me that doesn't want to let it go. When I like kind of see other things about like eating disorders online, it really does trigger me. But I think there can be like ways to have positive like platforms on it, but I think it really needs to be regulated, and I think you have to be very like careful of like the images you post about like your body. I think like pictures of yourself, like, you know, the before and after, like when I was really thin and now I'm healthy, like for me that's not helpful in any way.
Yeah,
because it's just I get quite competitive, I think, with
your how you're doing and stuff. And do you think like Instagram is a good, in terms of mental health, do you think it's a good like, do you think it's positive for mental health? Because I know personally it makes me anxious a lot of the time.
Yeah, well, yeah, it makes me so anxious.
Yeah, and I think like, is there a way, because I was talking to one of our friends about this and saying, is there a way of making it something really positive where you just follow people that make you happy? Like, I follow loads of like Instagrams all about like organising, and that's what makes me happy.
It firstly depends on sort of yourself. I think for me, Instagram is actually really damaging, and I've deleted it for a while because I get so like I feel so cluttered sort of with just like watching all these people's lives, but I also have found like amazing platforms there's this platform called Style Like You. I think I've spoken to you about it. It's called the What's Underneath Project, and they film like all sorts of mostly women, and they have to undress into their underwear, and while they're undressing they have to sort of talk about their life story. And they get asked a couple questions like, when do you feel the most vulnerable? Platforms like that, amazing. like literally, I remember I started watching them when I was travelling, and it like changed my life, because it was like everyone had like a complete different story. Like it's about like issues of like gender, sexuality, like race, mental health. Like although the story is all so different, like everyone has the same, where like they've grown up and they've just like hit this point where like their life has like gotten to rock bottom, and then they've come out of it, and they all tell the different ways that they've come out of it, and it's so positive, and at the end like everyone just like loves their body, always trying to. And I think like that was like the first time that I ever like learn about self-love, and like that actually it's okay to like have mental health problems, but like love yourself. And also like seeing all these like different, I think that's the thing, it was like seeing all these like different bodies. It's like,
that's amazing. That's like, only started coming out now. I feel like I think that's amazing, because it's a platform, it's an online platform, but it's not about one specific person. So it's not like following like one woman. And then you very get
it's like a whole platform of like completely different people from like all over the world, with like all different styles, and just like watching people. Like there was like the best one I've ever seen is this woman, this fat woman, and she uses the word fat as a positive thing, because she's just like, you know, like it's a descriptive word. Like, why does fat have to be a bad thing? Like, I get offended when people call me like, oh, you're big. Just say I'm fat. Like, it's fine to say I'm fat, because I am.
That's amazing.
And like platforms like that and there's a lot out there. I have seen like a lot, but I think they need to show this more. Like I think they need to show like a whole like different range of like people, rather than like, I don't know, I think the platforms that there's just like that one person and you kind of see them constantly. I think you really start to compare yourself to what they're doing. Because of like anorexia, like there's this whole like body dysmorphia thing, and I've never really understood like what my body really looks like, because I've seen it like completely different to the reality of it. Like when I was at my thinnest, it was like the biggest I've ever felt, and it's really interesting now, because I look in the mirror and it's as if I see like every single like girl or like women that I've ever like wanted to look like. And I feel like I have to like take all these layers off of like everything I've seen, like all the images I've seen of what I've always wanted to look like. And it's actually, I think a lot of people actually have that, is that, you know, when you try on like a pair of like jeans or like some sort of clothing item, you expect to look a way of like what you've seen these jeans as advertised to look like.
Yeah.
And it's really hard, I think, to actually see what they look like for your body. And that's something I'm like trying to learn at the moment, is to like look at myself and like look at me rather than sort of everything I've wanted to look like.
Yeah. Which
has been like years and years and years of wanting to look a certain way. And sort of needing to be thin. Like it became such a need for me. It was kind of like live or die, sort of. Yeah, I think like being conscious of who you are following on social media and like the amount of time you have, because I know that I can get very addicted to it. With my Tumblr phase, it was like an insane amount of my life was spent online. Yeah. And actually a really interesting thing with Tumblr is like, so this was like before Instagram was a thing, like it didn't exist. So I had like 10,000 followers, which was like a lot ish, like for that time.
It's loads.
Yeah, I bet you're jealous.
Yeah, very jealous.
And it was really crazy because it was like most of my followers were like also young anorexic girls or like girls with eating disorders. And the most interesting thing that I look back now is that when my followers, so when the iller I got, like the more followers I was getting, and it was this like cycle of becoming, like posting more and becoming more vocal about my my eating disorder, and then getting more followers and feeling like a sense of validation from that, because I felt like I was kind of, I don't know, everyone has that feeling of when you get more followers or likes, like it gives you some sort of
makes you feel good.
Yeah, it makes you feel like you're doing something right. So it was this like whole cycle of like needing to continue staying ill, I think, in order to like get this sort of attention.
Yeah.
And I felt really like loved in my community and very like popular, because like people would message me all the time, and I met up with a few people, and like people would like send me presents and stuff. Like it was really
my god, that's crazy.
It was really weird, like
wow.
And like so the whole like followers thing just became like such an addiction. Like it was such a thrill for me to like have these people kind of wanting to be me. And it was crazy because it's like people wanted to not be me, but like I'm sure they idealized my lifestyle, my illness, but it was really sad because like I didn't want to be me, so
you were
like,
ill, so
it's like
wanted.
So it was just like this whole paradox of it was so many people attempted suicide like all the time. We'd like post videos and we'd all have to like
do something,
find a way to help, like to find them. Like loads of times we did that like as a collective, which is like so crazy to think about, like as 14-year-old me.
It's like another time.
Yeah,
it's crazy that you came out of it in this way.
No, I deleted it like after a year of having it. I deleted it because that was when I was like serious about going into recovery, so I was like, need to delete this, need to like start again. But it's actually really funny because I made a recovery blog called like Recovering Mim, and I don't use it, but I look back because it's still there, and it's like the pictures are just not okay. Like it's all coloured pictures, but it's all instead it's just like really like toned, really thin white girls, and it's like, is that healthy? Like
it's like it's on the borderline of
it's like I wouldn't aspire, like I don't aspire to look like that in the same way anymore.
Good.
But it's like it was weird to like look back at that quite recently and just be like, this recovering blog was still not healthy.
I was gonna say like I guess talk through what's going on now. Like what are some things that you've been doing apart from therapy?
So I've been in and out of therapy for years. I didn't do the Brent Youth Centre, the one you went to, but I went through to CAMS in Brent, which was amazing. So and then I stopped that after I was sort of like 16, 17, and the thing is, because I did CBT, and that was really amazing at the time for what I needed, but because it's behavioural therapy, it was kind of like learning about how to change my behaviours like then, but I never went deep into like what was actually going on with me and why I developed my eating disorder. So I think I was left after being sort of 17, 18 with the sort of aftermath of it, and I didn't really know what to do. So I was like, although I was never I never had like I was going through like a lot of relapses, and I still do, like every few months or so it will kind of, I'll either go through like a relapse of depression or a relapse of anorexia, and I think it was kind of when I was 18, I kind of made the conscious decision that I needed to like maybe change that for myself. And it was literally the switch of like, I remember like the exact day, like walking up to Kilburn High Road and just being like, I'm going to be positive. And because my dad's really negative, so I think I needed that switch. So I was just like, I'm just going to like be an optimist now. I'm just going to like try and think of good things as an outcome. And that was really like where it started, and like kind of lame, but also becoming vegetarian kind of made me see it, just like everything kind of fit. Like I just started to care more for like everything in the world and see myself as like important for like the world, and like everything more as like an equal sort of being.
You felt more included.
Yeah, I just and then I went travelling, which was obviously, as most people probably experience, like a very happy time.
Yeah.
And I just started reading more about like philosophy and like self-help and like the idea of self-love, watching those videos, kind of reading more into spirituality and like alternative ways to like just to help yourself. I started going to meditation classes, which are in Kensal Rise. So it's like all really local and like accessible. I think that was the thing, it was all accessible. It wasn't like this crazy like alternative thing I was turning to. It was just quite simple. I think people need to be educated about it more. I think schools need to be more involved. There's a massive flaw with the education system in mental health.
Definitely.
And I think that's where I think people need to come in and, you know, maybe create more online platforms for young people.
Having already discussed pro-anorexia groups and eating disorders in this episode, I thought it would be really interesting but also really essential to go deeper into what eating disorders are and how it's affecting young men and women today. So next episode I'll be discussing and interviewing young people who have experienced it themselves.
Please be advised, this podcast contains potentially upsetting discussions about mental health and suicide. If you're a young person seeking mental health support, please see our end of episode guidance, contact your GP for support, or call the Papyrus helpline for immediate help on 0800 068 4141. Thanks.